Right before me, we had two great presentations about TypeScript in details and the technical aspect of it. So I have decided that this presentation will not be about anything technical, but more about telling you the story of my experiences of using Flow over the years, and tell you about the migration process that I have been through to convert to TypeScript. And I will mostly emphasize on the part of why I did it and come up with some arguments that maybe you can relate to and hopefully you can use to decide if you want to try something else other than Flow. Yes. So let's start off by saying that, as we know, Flow and TypeScript are both static type checking languages that people tend to choose when it comes to type checking. So I've been using Flow for like over 2 years on several of my projects, most of them being React.js projects. And from my experience, I have had a great time using Flow, and there have been many benefits of it, but also have been a lot of issues and frustration that comes along with it that just gave me headaches because I couldn't find any easy answer on the problems I had to solve. So due to some of the frustration that I will talk about some of it in this presentation, is also the reason why I want to try out TypeScript. So let's dive right into it. This is a message from the Apollo team who provides a GraphQL client. I don't know if many of you are familiar with GraphQL, but it's a very popular and very much used library nowadays for querying data language. And when I decide to use a third-party library and add a new dependency to a project, and when the library in itself is mature, I assume that a definition type comes along with the library. But then I found out that the Apollo team actually says that they do not support Flow anymore. And I asked myself why. And as curious as I am, I tried to find an answer for it. And I tried to dig into the definition types libraries for Flow and TypeScript. And for those of you who have tried either of them, know that TypeScript have, when you want to add a definition type library, you install with the @ types, and for Flow, you use flow type. Each of them have their own repository. And when I checked on them, I tried to find some insights on what's the reason for it. I found out that TypeScript has almost 5,700 third-party libraries for type definitions. While in comparison, it's not a number here, but I roughly counted for flow type, it's roughly 600. And yeah, yesterday when I checked this, I actually saw Eirik contributed to this open source project, so credit to him. But yes, a difference in 5,000, a magnitude of 5,000. It made me thinking, how did TypeScript be able to gain so much? And one thing is that TypeScript has been there for a very long time. And another thing I realized and thought about is that there is a specific user base that is contributing to all of this. And Håkon mentioned it earlier, Angular. Angular have been there for a very long time, and Angular have had their ups and downs over the years. But what I know about Angular is that it is built entirely in TypeScript. So they have a solid foundation for contributors to contribute to the type definition, and also the fact that other library frameworks like React and Vue.js and other frameworks who are able to use TypeScript, they are contributing together to this platform or for Flow definition types. And we can probably say the same for Flow. But here comes some of my frustration for Flow, because one of the things that I checked the changelog for Flow, and like you can see here, they have very frequent updates on their progression. And in many cases, that is a good thing when a project is having this progression for updates. But for my case, I have this issue that whenever I try to update a Flow project, I stumble across a lot of issues that just makes it hard for me to update. And we could say that in many cases that when you just update a dependency or third-party library, that's the issue. But when they decide to release so many updates with such frequency, I want it to be sort of consistent and easy for me to update. But one of the reasons for it being hard is that the third-party libraries that contribute on the type definition can't get in sync with the progression. So whenever I update the flow, the third-party libraries can't get in sync. So I usually just get a lot of errors from the third-party libraries because they can't follow the progression. But why does the type definition matter to me or to you guys at all? And I use Visual Studio Code to program my projects with React and IntelliSense, which is already mentioned. It comes with the auto-completion feature, the auto-import, and all the cool features. But for TypeScript, this is out of the box. For Flow, you have to install the extension for it to work. And the extension itself is not enough. You need to add the flow config, you need to set it up, you need to add the path environments. And for Windows especially, I have had the experience that it's an impossible task installing on Windows. I have tried to help my friends, but most of the times I gave up. So the thing with the IntelliSense part is that they have a feature that I use very often. And that is the, like in many of the IDE that you guys are familiar with, you have this go to definition feature or peek into the library. And that is a feature I use a lot. Because when I decide to use a new third-party library, I often, or you guys probably also need to read the documentation to understand how to use it. But in many cases, the documentation is not so well written and easy to understand. So for me, personally, I use the flow type definition to understand how to use the library by peeking into the definition. Like for instance, in the beginning I mentioned that GraphQL didn't come or support flow anymore. I use the flow definition type to understand more about how to use the library, because in many cases, and the documentation itself is, in some cases it's good, but it's also part that it doesn't make sense. So for me, to peek into this is much easier, and into other libraries, this helps me a lot along the way. So this is very crucial for me. So based on this and the other facts is the reason for me trying out something new. So yeah, 3 main reasons. Flow types lacks type definition, and maintaining flow is a hassle due to updates. So that's the main reason for me trying out to convert to TypeScript. So how did I do it? Currently, I have a side project beside working here, and I have a code base I'm maintaining. It's about, or I did a line count for the code base, because Visual Studio Code have an extension where you can actually just use the extension to count the amount of line of codes. Very easy. And of course, I ignored the irrelevant codes, and I landed on a code base of 15,000 lines of codes. I remember on the Slack channel, I don't know which one, but there was a post where a group trying to migrate to TypeScript with a code base of 30,000. So just have something to compare. For me, I was the sole maintainer of the project. So when I tried to migrate this, it was easier compared to those, or if you have a team and try to convert it, because since I'm the only one who is trying to migrate it, I don't deal with the merge conflicts, and it's much easier. And it took me 1 week to actually convert everything. There's a lot of guides to how to do it. So the easiest step that I use is this one. You first install the TypeScript, install Babel, whatever, and then for each file, JavaScript file, you just convert the JavaScript to TypeScript, remove the flow comments, and run TSC to type check all the TS file. But along the way, I did a stupid mistake because because you can do this incremental, right? You can do this one file at a time. You don't need to convert your entire code base to my TypeScript at once. But I did it, and I renamed everything to TypeScript files, and bam, it hit me with like 500 flow errors, or TypeScript errors, sorry. And that's quite a lot. But for me, I had fun migrating it because TypeScript gave me more confidence in my code base, because my project, it has also a time issue where I had to fight against time, so I couldn't really use my time to write a good test, use Cypress or Jest or whatever to have a good test coverage. So the type checking was sort of giving me some sort of safety in my code. And I feel like Flow couldn't give me that, because TypeScript is more stricter. And because it's more stricter, I felt that by using it, it gave me more confidence in my code base. So during the migration process, I actually found some bugs that I couldn't find if I didn't convert. So that's a good thing. So in the end, I will just say that maybe some of you can relate to some of the things that I have been through, and to maybe give some idea if you want to decide on if you want to convert from Flow to TypeScript or not, or if you want to choose either Flow or TypeScript, you have something to sort of think about. So that's it. Thank you.
Noen spørsmål til det? Det regner med der, siden det her er jo akkurat det vi jobber med.
Did you have any particular libraries that were hard to convert?
Yeah, because JavaScript claims to have type definition for 90% of the top most used JavaScript projects. So in cases where I am using projects with don't have that much use or is not that popular, the type definition doesn't exist. So you either have to type it yourself or just type this as any. Yeah. And yeah, to answer the question, I think I had some, but I can't remember which one. So yeah.
Hey. Are there any major syntactical differences that would... I'm asking from the vantage point of me, René, Hans Henrik, and Johannes working in a team. And I'm very eager to port it to TypeScript, but I'm easing my storm until later. But are there any like major syntactical differences from Flow to TypeScript that would make life harder for my friends if I were to port it, say during a long leave from work in Civilforsvaret?
Yeah, harder in the sense that it makes them harder to follow the code base.
Yeah, what I would say is that if if you knew Flow from before, and I was your friend working with you on your project, and then I ported it to TypeScript, would there be any major syntactical differences that would make your life harder? Or is it like just capitalization? I saw that string was written with a capital S, for instance, in TypeScript.
There's a particular guide for how you actually can directly convert Flow types to TypeScript. So I can probably link it to you later or something. Yeah, but I wouldn't say it isn't that much of a difference that that makes it hard for your friends to convert it. It's pretty much the same and pretty much intuitive. So, but there is something that I learned along the way of my creating it. So just the process to actually it's like learning anything new. That is the process of getting to know how things works. But I will say it isn't that difficult.
Could I ask you another follow-up question? Which is, if you're finished?
Yeah, of course.
So, for instance, in a work project, you said that you could do it incrementally, but what I'm imagining is that perhaps you're like when you're converting, you're perhaps making this very tight wall between your flow code and your TypeScript code, because TypeScript will not be able to use the flow types, and flow will not be able to use the TypeScript types. So that's what I see as an argument against doing an incremental switch. But do you think that argument is so strong that you shouldn't do it incrementally? Like if I were to like add the TypeScript compiler tomorrow, and then we just have the TypeScript compiler, and whenever we touch the file, we would convert it. So like doing 1% of the code base at a time for each commit.
Yeah.
Would that be a bad idea, or is it? Would that be your strategy?
Yeah, I don't have direct experience with it, but based from the blog that I read, and also the project in-house here at KF, talk with Tanya, she said that they are actually porting from TypeScript to Flow.
What?
Yeah. So they probably maybe have some more insight on it, but I believe that I personally will prefer to do it not incrementally, but do it all at the same time, because I don't know how big the project of yours is, but I assume that it will take 1 week or 2 weeks, depending on how much code it is. And if you like sit down and just do it together, I believe that it's more effective doing it that way than porting incremental. But yeah, I can't really answer it directly.
Yeah, I'll throw it back.
Jeg tar det på norsk. Jeg kunne bare legge til noe der. VS Code porter hele kodebasen sin fra JS til TypeScript, og de gjør det incremental. Og hvis du bruker type webpack eller noe sånt som har loaders for koden din, så kan du interoppe TS og JS. Så du kan fint importere en TS-fil inn i JS, fordi runtime så vil det uansett være JS alt sammen. Jeg vet ikke hvordan det funker med Flow, men jeg vil anta at det fungerer på samme måte.
Fotnote, så Flow også en Babel en Babel loader. Ja. Så det blir omtrent det samme. Jeg tenkte egentlig bare på tapet av type informasjon da, som vil være halvveis. Noen flere?
Ja, da var vi egentlig ferdig. Siden vi fikk ett frafall, så ble det litt kortere talks i dag. Så takk til Kien.
Thank you.